G'day guys, welcome to today's Spearo podcast. Now chances are you could be exactly like Turbo and I are and want to get better at your spearfishing. You're in the right place. This is the show where we interview experts and authorities from all around the world and get their hints, tips, tricks and advice to improve your spearfishing. And today's show is fantastic for that. We speak to David Hochman from Spearo Charters over there in the US. He has been requested from a couple of listeners, so just a quick hello to Savas Valas and Austin Barr. Both of these guys requested David Hochman. After talking with him, I knew exactly why. The dude is just phenomenal. If you're interested in hunting striped bass, this guy's like the man. He puts guys on the fish. He knows the techniques, and we cover a whole lot of ground with him in this interview. He's an ex-commercial fisherman as well, so his understanding of the marine environment is just excellent. And to top all that off, he's just a wicked, lovable, awesome to chat to sort of bloke. And Turbo and I had an absolute ball chatting with him. So that interview just in a second. Before we get there, had a really cracker review on Amazon for 99 tips to get better at spearfishing, which is also available on iBooks now. NJ McEwen, he says on Amazon, a really good collection of tips for spearfishing. The book is well written and the authors have a good sense of humour that makes it an easy read. I'm new to spearfishing and this book has lots of information that will help me improve. I've also been working my way through the Spearo podcast that the authors run, and although it is not necessary to understand the book, I would recommend readers also listen to the podcast, mainly because they are good both in informative and an entertaining manner. On the podcast, they interview renowned spearfishers and lots of the tips are direct from their mouths. A lot of the tips are covered in the podcast, but the reason I like this book is because it's a concise collection of the best tips from over 40 hours of interviews and triggers my memory of the more in-depth discussion on the podcast. Also, having the points itemized helps me to pick 1 or 2 points I want to work on when I go for a dive rather than trying to work on 10 things at once. He says, strongly recommend for all spearfishing enthusiasts, particularly for those that are newer to the sport. So, really good review. Thanks, man. It made me blush. Right, Curdy in Australia gave the podcast a review on iTunes. Now, this does big favours for us. It helps other people just like you find the show. So thanks, Curdy. He says, this podcast has improved my diving dramatically. I binge listened to all the old episodes over a few weeks and I'm completely caught up now. I take notes on my phone to further research anything the guests or the hosts talk about or suggest to do. Over the last 4 months, I've gone from a 5-metre pot shot diver to a 12-metre plus diver with over 1 minute 30 dive times and good fish to show for it. All thanks to the information these guys have put out in the podcast. Keep up the great work. What a phenomenal review. Thanks, Curdy. That one also made me blush. And another quick review here from United States. Every week, Shrek and Turbo talk about tips and tricks that you can use to improve your spearfishing. There are also lots of laughs. So thanks, man. 2 cracker reviews, so thanks, guys. Also, like Turbo's written a cracker article on Spearo. It's available right now. If you pump into Google Spearo Spearfishing Deep, you can get like 5 actionable tips that Turbo sort of pulled out of the Brandon Hendrickson interview. It's a really nice way he's sort of laid it out, and it's kind of just sort of boiled it down. It's kind of like what our book does, but it's just from Brandon Hendrickson's interview, but he did a really good job of it. So just pump into Google Spearfishing Deep Spearo, and that should come right up. I also read a book called Deep by James Nestor, and I also got him on for an interview as well that will come out in the next few months. But Deep, what the ocean teaches us about ourselves, and this is a phenomenal book. So I've wrote a book review about that. If you want to learn a bit more about that, type in Deep Book Review Spearo, and that'll also come up. So anyway, longer intro today, guys. Let's get into this interview with David Hochman. Sorry for droning on a little bit, but enjoy this episode. Turbo and I sure enjoyed chatting to him. So thanks to Savas Valas and Austin Barr for recommending David. Here it is, the interview. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Now, you can check out Audible. It's basically audiobooks. If you like the Spearo podcast, you're probably going to like listening to a book. So go to audibletrial.com/Spearo to get a free audiobook download and a free 30-day trial. Now, some of the audiobooks that Turbo and I both like are the 4-Hour series by Tim Ferriss. There's the 4-Hour Body, the 4-Hour Workweek, the 4-Hour Shift. They're all good. His latest book is Tools of Titans. It's unfortunately not an audio version yet, but definitely check out the 4-Hour Workweek. It's friggin' hilarious. I also would like to listen to The Undisputed Truth by Mike Tyson. I think that would be a great read. And also Bigger, Leaner, Stronger by Michael Matthews. It's the simple science of building the ultimate male body, and I definitely need that. But you can check this out. Get a book for free. Just pump in audibletrial.com/Noob Spearo. Give it a blast. Check it out. Support the Noob Spearo podcast. Guys, support the Noob Spearo podcast by shopping with today's sponsor, spearfishing.com.au. That's right, you can use the code Noob Spearo and save $20 on all purchases over $200. If you're looking for that next spear gun or wetsuit, then spearfishing.com.au has got a huge range of equipment for you to go and check out. There's good reviews on there about everything from booties to budgie smugglers, so enjoy and get hold of something good. If you live here in Australia, check out Adreno's physical stores in Melbourne, Sydney or Brisbane and join over 60 underwater experts to get advice about everything you need for equipment. Thank you for shopping with our sponsor, spearfishing.com.au, and supporting the Noob Spearo podcast. Welcome to the Noob Spearo podcast. Today, guys, we're chatting with David Hochman from Spirit Charters out there in New York City. Is it New York City?
Rhode Island.
Rhode Island. Close enough.
That's why I do the research, and I should have passed that on to you, mate.
No, I've got it. I've got it here. I just wanted to say New York City, actually, but it's really good to have you on today, David. We've had a couple of listeners request you, Sarvis Vallis and Austin Barr. Austin's got a charter with you coming up soon, so really awesome to have you with us today. And I believe you've been working all week, and you had a charter yesterday. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on in your world?
Yeah, so we're just out here shooting bass and everything else that we can come across, that looks good and tastes good.
Yeah.
I'm running charter out to Block Island, and we're hunting bass. Yesterday we had a big day. They had the Tri-State Pole Spearfishing tournament, and my boat took first, second, and third. Yeah, it was awesome. And Rob Navertail, who's a phenomenal spear fisherman, he shot a 53-pound striper on the pole, which is the third biggest ever shot. The other two bigger were mine. And fortunately, or unfortunately for him, it lost 2 pounds in the process of transport, and so he didn't break my record.
Can't be too upset. You don't look too upset about that.
I'm not too upset. He came close. I felt kind of bad for him, but not too bad.
Isn't that funny how fish do lose a bit of weight with just like a couple of hours in the esky? They lose quite a few pounds sometimes. I mean, Turbo's fish go from being like 3 or 4 pounds to 2 pounds by the time we get back to the boat ramp, David.
Yeah. Well, that's because he's Australian.
Yeah.
I like to say I got a really good eye because I can shoot really small fish, you see. Yeah. It's just not a challenge shooting something at 68 pounds.
All you need is long arms. You're good.
All right, David, so we were chatting a little bit with you before we started recording, and you said you started when you were 11 years old. You're 51 now, so, I mean, even in Turbo's maths, that's 40 years of spearfishing. So can you tell us a little bit about how you got started?
Yeah, so I grew up down in Fairfield on the water, and in the summertime I had nothing to do. So I would drag my aluminum boat out with a pole spear, and my mother's hot pink polka dot wetsuit with breast cups in it, and I'd wear that because it was the only thing I had. And it kept me warming up, and I'd shoot fish just about every day, and so it just evolved from there, man. Yeah, and then I got into tournament fishing and deeper water, and kept taking it to another level, and I ran the circuit in the Northeast for about 10 years and gave up on that and started the charter. I've also fished commercially for striped bass for about 25 years.
Sounds awesome. We're going to try and dig into striped bass with you for the Veterans Vault. But, so these fish you caught just sort of yesterday and today, see, the biggest was over 50 pounds. That's well over 20 kilos in our sort of southern hemisphere speak. But that's a huge fish. Are they quite often that big up there?
Yeah, we're the mecca of striped bass on Block Island. It's world-class fishing, but the 50 pounds are hard to come by. And the 60s, of course, are even harder. But this year we put 10 50s in the boat. Wow. So far, we still got another month and a half to go. And it's been a good year. It's you got to know where they are. You got to know when they move on the tides. You got, there's a lot of factors to it, but if you can keep track of them, and I've done it long enough to keep track of them, it's just a matter of running into them,
Oh, cool. Yeah. And it sounds like a sustainable fishery. You're doing it year on year. So that's pretty cool. All right, what's sort of like maybe a memorable fish you had starting out in that, was it a polka dot breasted wetsuit you were wearing? What was a memorable fish you took in those early days?
Well, I recall the first time, back then the guns were different, so I remember one of the things, it's always the worst thing that sticks in your head, So I was out on block time with a 65 Panther shotgun, a handgun, I think maybe 75. And I remember laying on the bottom, and this big striped bass swam up to me, and I fired it. It hit him in the head, bounced out. He kind of looked at me and took off. And I thought, man, I need more. I gotta upgrade this equipment.
So, 40 years ago, your equipment options were far more limited than they are today. Was that kind of one of the big obstacles you had starting out?
Absolutely. Yeah, we couldn't even get our hands on long fins, for a while. And then they finally started becoming readily available. Guns were, we didn't have reels on guns. The reels that we had would sink the guns, which was always a nightmare, and dangerous, So, yeah, it was tough. I mean, so as the equipment got better, we got better too. And, internet helps us all no matter how much we know,
What about freediving? Did you have a buddy or like a mentor that give you some tips and some good advice starting out, or how did you sort of learn the freediving side of it?
Well, I started freediving on my own just because I had that opportunity to do it, and it was I didn't have tanks or anything, so I did it for a long time. But then I joined a tournament down in Rhode Island one time, thinking, I can shoot fish. I'm a big dog at this stuff. I've been doing it a long time, and man, I learned some lessons that day, So I went out on a kayak. I've never fished off a kayak. I had the wrong guns, and these guys came in with stringers full of big fish, and I think I had 4 fish that didn't make the measurement. I befriended the right people, John Warnock and Ted Warnock and John Murphy and Dave Plikus, or Sipley rather. And I learned a lot that summer, and I came back the next year in the Connecticut Open and won it. But those guys taught me well.
Ah, cool. All right, cool.
Should we go to memorable fish?
Yeah.
My most memorable fish?
David?
Yeah.
I'll tell you a funny story. My most memorable fish was 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I went out commercially fishing, and it was blowing 35 knots out of the east, and the current was running to the west. And it was running north, so it was kind of quartering the wind. And I went out. I ran up on this area that was real fishy, and I marked fish. I jumped over the side, and I had my friend Barney driving the boat, and he would bring the boat back to me once I surfaced. Yeah, so I get down. I just had a bad dive. I rushed the dive, and I'm looking at these huge stripers and clean water swimming all around me. And I don't take the shot. I bail out, and I come to the surface. But when I surface, I look over, and the boat is 400 yards downwind. Now, it's 8-9 foot seas. It's a nasty day. And finally, he starts coming back. I jumped in, and I said, "What's going on?" And he said, "The motor wouldn't start." I said, "Oh, man, the motor always starts, right?" So I'm kind of fixed on the fish now. I run back up. I go back up to the same number. I jump and I drop down. I look him over, and I shoot a 49-pounder. I come up. I pit the fish. I look up. Barney's 400 yards away. So now I figure I realize what's going on. I start swimming towards the boat as I'm handling this fish, and he anchors the boat. And the way the wind is quartering, I make it about 30 yards from the boat, and I can't quite make the boat, and I swing around into this 5-knot current, and I just start kicking towards the boat the best I can, but losing ground. So I swam for about 3.5 hours.
Oh,
After 3.5 hours, I finally see the Coast Guard cutter coming around, and I could see the boat every now and then because the seas are big enough that the boat would disappear, and then I'd see the flag pop up. And I had the flag up high, but still, it was big waves. And so about 3.5 hours into it, I see the Coast Guard start coming into the wind, and I'm thinking, what are these guys looking for me in the wind? I'm affected by the current, in the water. And so another half hour, now it's starting to get dark, and I'm thinking, well, I'm going to spend the night here. Well, they finally start to cut right, and they find me, and they're running this 20-foot pontoon boat with 3 guys and helmets on and the face masks and all, and they roll up on me and said, they roll up on me. They go, "Are you all right?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm all right." And they said, "Can you get in the boat?" I said, "Sure, I can get in the boat. Can you hold my gun?" And he said, "Yeah, I'll take your gun." I said, "What about this fish? Will you take this fish?" He said, "What?" And he said, "I guess so." I throw this 49-pound bass in the boat, and they're all standing with their feet up to their chest, standing on the fish because it's this little narrow boat, you know. They were laughing so hard they couldn't believe it. They were shaking my hand when they left, you know.
So you refused to let that fish go for 4 hours of paddling. Yeah.
I would let it go.
Yeah. Good.
That's unreal.
Good on you, man.
Good story. That if we could we talk about a couple of your record fish? Particularly because Shrek and I love the pole spear. We're both experts at it. I think
that's definitely.
I'm not even sure I've shot anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Experts just to drip under pressure. Yeah. So, mate, let's. Why don't we have a chat about your 52.4 pound pole spear striped bass record?
So I was actually fishing with a charter that day. And we rolled up on the fish, and I will often get into the water with these guys. I drop down, and I fall right into this massive school of striped bass. I mean, the way that we have them here is they bowl up in a 200-yard area at times, 20 feet off the bottom, 50 feet of water. And so it was a similar scenario to that. They're just shoulder to shoulder, these fish just milling around in circles. So I come down over the top of them. I can see big heads. I know I'm on good fish. And I cock the gun on the way down. I drop in without kicking. As I fall through them, the fish scatter. You know, you hear the noise, boom, 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 all those big tails going. And I lay down and I put a rock on my off shoulder. And I've got a perfect setup, okay? I got a wide open area in front of me. And when these fish scatter like that, they'll kick the bottom up so that you get small pieces of shell and sand floating in the water column, and it actually helps significantly to hide you, camouflage you. So I've got the perfect scenario. So I lay there and I wait. I've got a good breath hold. I'm watching 40-pounders go by, good solid high 40s, and I see in front of me this fish coming out directly at me, coming into the school almost. And I've got fish now swimming over my back. I've got them swimming off my side. They're all around me going in different directions. But I'm focused on this one fish that is enormous. And I'm looking at him as he comes. And sometimes when they're 15 feet away, you question whether you're sure, whether you know how big they are. Yeah. And the closer he got, the bigger I realized he was. This fish was big, wide, heavy fish, right? So he comes in. I figure I got this fish. Like I'm gonna put the pole down his throat, like he's just coming heavy, And he's coming, and all of a sudden now I realize he's in the 70-pound class. Okay, as he gets to that pole spear, you got to be so close to him. I mean, you can't shoot him far. You can't shoot him 10 feet because you'll just cripple him. So I need him to get a little closer, and he's at about 10 feet now. And at about 10 feet, he senses something's wrong. I could see it, and he sort of it almost seems like he stops, like he just kind of almost threw his dorsal and pectoral fins out and like stopped himself. Starts to make that slow right-hand turn, and he's just far enough away that I'm just not willing to take the shot with the pole. And as he turns, I realize how thick and long he is. He was probably, I would have to say, he was 78 to 82 pounds. He was bass. So he rolls off me, and as he rolls off me, this 52 comes in front of me, and I shoot him.
Anticlimax.
That was a great story. I was like, man, he's going to get this fish. He's going to get this fish. Yeah. So as good as that fish was, it was still a little bit disappointing for you.
Oh, yeah. The funny thing is there was, you get all those thoughts going through your head, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm about to break my gun record with the pole. Like, that's not right, Yeah.
I hate it when you have those fish and you can see them, and it's almost like before you've even pulled the trigger or let the band go, you can already see yourself holding the fish up in a photo on the boat, and something always goes wrong in those situations.
Yeah, that's big mistake number one.
Yeah.
What about this 68.5 pound world record with a gun, mate? How was it a notable fish as well?
Yeah, it was really something. I had a similar experience. I've seen a couple really big fish in my lifetime that are over 75 pounds, and that was a dive before. The other time that it happened to me was a dive before that fish. I had dropped down, and it. So if you can picture it, there's a reef, okay, with these big boulders, and you come from up current of those boulders. And what you want to do ideally is fall down just in front of them, glide into them, and then look past them. And in past them is a flat area of pebble. And the bass stack up on their bellies just laying out of the current behind them. So if you can make the right approach, you can get in there without them even knowing you're present. If you come over the top, it scares them all away. So I drop down. I'm diving with my buddy, John Warnock, and I make a very fast dive. I pump up quick. I go straight down, and I fall right in the right spot. I know where I am. I slide into these boulders, and I look ahead of me, and there's a fish that I gauge at 20 pounds, and then a fish behind it that I gauge at 48 pounds. So I want the 48-pounder. But the problem is the 20-pounder's in front of me. So I wait. I got plenty of time. I just hit the bottom. I'm just going to wait till something shifts, I was considering raising my gun up over the top of the 20, but I felt the angle was wrong. So I had time. So I was waiting. And as I'm doing this, unbeknownst to me, John had come down late and came down over my right-hand shoulder, and from the top of the boulder shot the 20-pounder. So at first it was just sheer chaos. I didn't know what the hell happened. I get the line hits my snorkel, almost knocks my mask off, The fish go off, the big fish goes off, and I turn around and come up, and I get back in the boat, and my son was driving the boat, and I said, John just shot a friggin' 20-pounder, I said to him, what the hell are you doing shooting 20-pounders, John? And he says, he looks at me like I'm stupid, and he goes, it's 47, 48 pounds. He throws the boat to 48-pounder. I don't know what I was looking at. I must have been looking at it 85. The other fish was so much bigger.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, wow.
So that was disappointing. But 2 dives later, I shot over the top of that rock pile and landed in 58 feet. And I turned around and looked up current, and I waited a minute. I saw some movement. A fish went by, and then this beautiful 70-pound fish comes off the height of the reef up high and above me. And I brought the pneumatic up, had a perfect position, squeezed the trigger, broke the spine. Fish rolled right over, brought it up, felt its eyes. The instant I felt its eyes, I knew how big it was. And the funny thing, at the time, my son, who was driving the boat that day, was 9 years old, and he has always been amazed by the thought of a world record. So every time I put a 50-pounder in the boat, he looks at me and goes, Dad, is that the world record? And I go, no, that's not the world record. Up in the boat, and I get up on the gunnel to take a look just to think to be sure I've got what I think I've got. And he looks up at me and says, Dad, is that the world record? And I said, that's the world record.
Far out. What an outfit there. That's a pretty wicked story.
Bloody good story.
Hey, so what's your favourite hunting technique, and how do you apply it effectively? And probably better yet, how do you teach it to others, David? Sounds like you spend a lot of time, laying on the bottom and looking around at what's around you and getting your kind of position correct with current and, sort of the topography around you. Like, is that kind of your favourite go-to technique?
Yeah, so the way I instruct people to do is you get down to the bottom. First of all, when you're coming down to the bottom, you don't want to kick the last 15, 20 feet because I found that for whatever reason, fins freak fish out more than anything. I mean, they just freak them out. And for the same reason, when you're on the bottom, you really want to pin those fins down against the bottom and not let them wave up at all, And then, I tell people on the way down to take a look around and find a nice big boulder. And if they can't get that on their off shoulder, to break them up a little bit to help them hide. And then, you kind of lay down and assess the area. And generally what I do is if I don't see a lot of movement, if I don't see activity, if I don't see small fish and medium fish moving around, I'll move forward. But I do it very carefully. I keep my fins very low. I kick with a short burst, and then I walk my hands across the rocks until I start to see movement, and then I'll retuck myself and reposition myself.
Okay. All right, cool. Yeah. So sometimes, like there in Rhode Island, the water's pretty cold. How much weight are you wearing on your suit?
Yeah, I try to dive light. I try to keep people diving light. Obviously, as you know, we want to float at 10 feet. But I'm wearing most of the time a 5 mil suit with about 8 pounds. But you power through the first 20 feet, and then you start to compress and drop quicker and quicker.
How do you teach guys to keep their feet still? Because I mean, I know I think I'm still guilty of it. Your feet just start sticking up. How do you tuck them?
Well, so what I tell people to do is actually lock them into the rocks. What I'll do is if I've got a rock on my left and right of my foot, I kind of spread my legs out until I feel something grab it. I'll just lock them right in there. Keep my toes out flat, keep my toes out flat, keep those blades pressed against the bottom. There's 2 factors that freak fish out, and I'm convinced it's the fins and heart rate. Of course that's training, but a real low heart rate will make a big difference when it comes to having fish close that gap and getting really close to you.
All right, good. So you encourage guys to spend a little bit more time relaxing on their breathe up, and then when they get on the bottom, lock their fins in somewhere in a good position.
Keep their head low, keep their body low. Let the fish do the work. I mean, I tell everybody, just let the fish do the work. The thing is, if you see a fish and go after them, the odds of getting them are slim. And they have that curiosity factor, and you got to let that work for you, And so as long as you're positioned properly, and you're just staying in one spot, not moving, your heart rate's low, you've got your head down low, your fins are tucked in, that most of the time those fish will work around you. They'll come work into you, I should say.
Yeah, awesome. All right. You've spent a lot of time in the water. What's one of the toughest situations you've faced in the ocean, and what did you kind of learn from it?
Well, I think we have some of the toughest conditions here because of the techniques that we use. And when I say that, the reason is that what we do is we bring the boat up over the fish, and then you got to jump in the water. You got to take 3 breaths because of this. We have high current here, so you really can't spend a lot of time breathing up. You jump in the boat, of course, your heart rate's up a little bit. You take 3 breaths, and you got to go. Yeah, so I've learned to use self-taught yoga techniques, essentially, to get myself calmed down, and I think one of the best things I found is that last breath, where you do like a purge breath, where you blow it all the way out, and you concentrate on your heart rate, and you get that heart rate to drop down nice and low, and I think you can recover, or not necessarily recover, but you can get ready to go quicker with a lower heart rate.
Okay. All right, cool. So, I mean, you've had lots of scary stories with current there. That's kind of the main factor diving off there for guys, getting them used to the current?
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, it takes some learning. There's a bit of a learning curve. You got to come down, and a lot of guys want to face up current, and you're better off usually facing down current, so you can move your gun a little better when you need to. But current, it's not that bad.
And a lot of the diving we do off sort of Brisbane here in Australia there, we do a lot of drift diving as well, and there's a fair amount of current, and a lot of the fish we find are on the sort of the front of the reef as you're coming onto the current side of it. Is that sort of the same there for you?
No, we tend to find them on the backside. At times we'll be on the front side, but most of our fish, we've got a heavy structure here, and so what they do is they sort of they lay behind that structure, and as the bait gets washed over the top of these rocks, they hit it. They'll lay there, look up, and then as that bait is disoriented and washed around, they feed on them.
All right, cool. What's some of your other target species there, apart from the strippers? And it sounds like you're
You say strippers?
Yeah.
We know what you've been up to in China.
That was my nickname for striped bass. I was calling them strippers. But Turbo straight away had other ideas, but as usual.
Oh, yeah, right,
What else? What other fish? What other tail are you chasing over there?
Oh, stop it. You can't do this.
You're going to get me in trouble.
All right, no, seriously, mate, what other species are you chasing over there apart from striped bass?
We got scup, porgies. We've got blackfish, bluefish. We've got codfish. We get codfish as well here. Those are primary species. We've got an influx of black sea bass in the last couple of years, which is nice. They're beautiful eating fish.
And they're quite a big fish too, aren't they?
No, not here. The black sea bass we have get to be 12 pounds if you're lucky.
Ah, okay, right. Yeah, we talked to in the early days of the podcast. We talked to Doug Peterson, who sort of lives in your neck of the woods. He used to do a bit of spearfishing there. He wrote a bit of a get started spearfishing book, and he was good to talk to. He talked a little bit about some of the other sort of entry level species you get off the beach there. What's your favourite species to eat in your area, from your area?
Black sea bass. They're wonderful eating. They're actually in the grouper family.
Oh, okay.
They're nice eating fish. They're really good.
This the striped sea bass. What do they eat like? What would you? Are they good eating fish? Are they renowned eating fish? Or
the stripers, yeah, they're a real meaty fish. They're delicious fish. They grill well. They stew well. Like fish soups, that type of thing. They don't. Yep. They fry okay, but they're really nice on the grill. It's a nice grilled fish. Heavy meat, real thick meat.
All right, cool. Let's get more into the striped bass. So we can chat in the Veterans Vault. This is a part of the show where we sort of ask our special guests to take us deep into their area of expertise. And I mean, you run a spearfishing guiding business. You've got Spirit charters there. Like yesterday, some of your customers shot some phenomenal fish. Let's talk a little bit more about striped bass, but also how you kind of get other people to come in and replicate your success with hunting and targeting them. So what time of the year do you target them, I guess, first off, and what's their range?
We start from June 15th and go into late October with our striped bass. Then they run up to the Hudson River and they winter over there. So we've got a fairly long season with them, And
what time of the year do you start shooting like the really good ones? Is it this kind of time of the year, or are they all year round?
No, we get them all year, but probably the best time for our really big bass. Most of my 60s and 50s have come from June 25th until July 10th, right in that window.
Okay.
I mean, there's a good chance we'll take another 4 or 5 50s. I mean, not to say, and who knows, maybe a 60, but they're here at other times. They just seem to be more concentrated during that time period.
How far is the motor out from Rhode Island to Block Island?
7 miles to the northern point, and then it's about 7 miles down the island. So it's about a 14-mile jog.
Okay, and I guess most of the time you guys are fishing the open side?
Yeah, we fish the south face, which is the ocean side.
Okay, cool.
A lot of current, a lot of structure. It's ideal conditions for striped bass over there.
Okay, so what sort of structure? I mean, you've talked about some of the reef. What other structure are you dealing with up there?
It's all reef. It's all heavy rock structure. I mean, some of our boulders are 25 feet by 25 feet. They're enormous.
Oh wow.
And, it's a fascinating bottom. And the more structure you have, the better. I mean, that's what these, as they call them, rockfish. I mean, they love structure. And it's an interesting thing. Over the years from doing this for so long, I've always punched numbers on every school of bass I've ever run into on the island and around the island. And so now I have about 450 waypoints. And it's interesting, on every waypoint, it's a rock mass somewhere.
Yeah.
I'll run from waypoint to waypoint to waypoint. And in between those waypoints, there's nothing. There's a lot of water. And when you get on top of the right one, boom, there they are. And they always go back to the same places.
Okay. And have you found, obviously you've been in the water for 40 years, are the fish numbers the same as when you started, or are they better now, or is it worse, or what have you seen?
I believe they're better. I'm seeing more fish. I mean, this 10, 50-pound striped bass this year is the highest, the most 50s we've taken in one season. Yeah. So I believe that I'm seeing more and more of them.
So what do you attribute that to? Have the local laws changed? Is fishing decreased, or what's happening? Do you believe?
Yeah, they've kept pretty good track of these bass, and about 2 years ago they decreased the limit from 2 to 1, and that's had a major effect, I believe. Okay. That's really had a major effect,
Yeah, I mean that is so you're only allowed one fish each, one big one each.
One fish any size, 28 inches or above. So anything basically 12 pounds or bigger.
So no wonder you were kind of going, oh, John shot a 20-pounder.
So that's pretty interesting. That's quite interesting. You've got to be really selective and make sure that's the fish you want to shoot. I mean, it's a full day out in the boat for one fish.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to make sure that you make the most of it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, a 40. I mean, the average weight that we put in the boat's around 41 pounds, and that's a beautiful fish. I mean, so you take a 40 pound fish, 39, 42. I mean, that's a hell of a fish. We've got a lot of big fish here.
You actually don't need a lot of fish if you shoot a 40-pound one. I mean, how many do you want?
Yeah, and then once we get all the bass in the boat, and everyone has their striper, we go and we fish for other fish. We fish for fluke or scup or blackfish, or we get triggers here as well. I didn't mention that. We get triggers as well. So, we have other species.
All right, and so, I mean, you take out all experience levels on your boat. If you've got some sort of fresher guys, maybe you've got a charter full of guys and they're all fairly inexperienced, what are kind of your biggest messages you give to them to successfully sort of hunt a striped bass? Like, what are you really trying to impress upon them so that they can have some success on their day out in the charter?
So basically, from start to finish, I get them in the water. I tell them how to breathe up. I tell them how to recover, and we do some training. And very commonly, I can get guys into 40 feet of water in a day. And when I can do that, I tell them to, dive down, take their time, nice, slow, easy kicks. Stop kicking when you're 15 to 20 feet from the bottom and just coast into them. Let the fish scatter. Lay down, get that rock on your off arm, get your chin down against the ground, get your fins tucked in tight, and then just look over your gun. Don't move around. One of the things with our striped bass is that when you move at all, when you're in the school, one fish bounces, the whole school bounces. And then it takes another 20 seconds for the school to resettle. So you really don't want to do that. You really just want to look straight over your gun and wait until a good fish crosses the gun and pull the trigger. It's as simple as that.
All right, cool. I can see how you're replicating kind of results with some of these guys, because they're pretty easy to follow instructions, and I can see it sort of working with a full day on the boat. So
yeah.
David, what we've been over structure. What depth are you diving consistently? Where do you see good fish, or are you in 60 foot? You're seeing better fish than you are in 40 foot. What's the sort of the idea there?
Our fish here are for the most part in 38 to 54 feet. They're right in that area. They just, for whatever reason, that's where the bait is, and that's where they are. Okay. So one day they're in 38, and the next day, we'll get them up in the shallows as well. There's days when we'll take 40 pounders in 8 feet of water, but for the most part, it's in that depth range.
Yeah, I actually watched one of your videos on YouTube, and it looked pretty shallow, and there was some big fish in there. I was getting pretty excited. It looked like it was 8 feet. I thought, I can handle that. I'm going to book a ticket. It looked really, really good. There was some really big fish taken too.
Yeah, in July, we'll get them up in the shallows, and it's really something. I mean, they'll slide right up into 12, 18 feet of water, and you've got these big schools of beautiful fish. It's pretty neat. It's pretty, you're looking at them from the top, pumping up, going, "Oh my God!" And you just drop down in.
Sometimes that's worse for your breath hold too, isn't it? Like when you get surrounded by a school of large-bodied fish and they're all over that sort of 10 kilo, 25 pound mark. Like, it's just so exciting, and the hardest part is being patient and choosing the right fish, I guess.
There are times when, and I instruct people to do the same. There are times when I'll drop down into a school of fish like this, and even to this day, after the thousands of times that I've done it, I still get so excited at times that I lose track of my heart rate and I can't control it. What I'll do is I'll look down at the sand. Take my eyes off the fish entirely, and I'll look down at the sand for about 10 seconds, drop my heart rate down, pick my head back up, and start hunting them again. And they never leave, because as you calm down and you have no demeanor, they're just going to stay there and look at you out of curiosity anyway.
Yeah. Okay, nice tip. Hey guys, have you thought about buying a freediving watch? I think lots of us have. Many of the guests on our show swear by them. If you are sort of a little bit confused and overwhelmed by thinking about which freediving watch to buy, I've got some solution for you today. Go to spearfishing.com.au/computers and have a look in there. There's an Adreno how-to video about how to choose a good dive watch. Now, one of the watches that gets mentioned a lot on the show is the Suunto D4, and they've lately come out with the D4F, which is a freediving dedicated watch. It cuts out a lot of the features that we don't need that scuba divers want. So it doesn't have tables and things like that, which is just a nice streamlined simple watch to help you monitor your dive times and, more importantly, your surface intervals. So go to spearfishing.com.au/computers and watch their how-to vid on how to choose a good freediving watch. If you do decide to buy a watch from spearfishing.com.au, use the code Spearo and save $20 on every purchase over $200 and support the Spearo podcast at the same time.
For our long-time listeners out there, who remembers the episode with Michael Takash and Jesse Cripps? Well, Taka, the cover tart, is at it again. He's on the cover of Spearing magazine. I just had a look at his website for Underwater Ally Productions, and he's been on just about every magazine in the world, but he's been on Spearing magazine a couple of times, and Jesse's responsible for those great shots of him. And if you'd like to know more about Spearing magazine, head to spearingmagazine.com and check out this wonderful publication. We love it, don't we, Shrek?
Yep, and just like you said, Taka gets more covers on Spearing magazine than you've had covers on Grindr. Head over to Spearing magazine and check out probably the world's highest quality spearfishing publication. Alright, let's move forward. The next part of the show is called the funniest moment, sort of the funniest thing you've seen out on the water. We've had some crackers on the show, lots of poo stories. Someone got humped by a turtle once. What's one of the funniest things you've seen out there, David?
Funniest thing I ever saw was me and a friend, Joe Patzel, were commercially fishing for bass in early June. Very cold water, probably 48 degrees, windy, cold day. And one of those days where no matter what you wear, 7 mil, you're freezing. You're freezing your ass off. So we're diving as hard as we can. We've got a 5-fish limit each on commercial. And we've got now, I don't know, we had like 6 fish, and we were having a hard time getting the last 4 because there weren't a lot of fish around. It was early yet. And we get in the boat, and I'm sitting on the port gunnel, and he's on the starboard gunnel across from each other. And we kind of got our head down and our legs spread. And I said, man, it's cold. And he said, God, he goes, kid, I'm freezing. I go, I know, I'm freezing too. He goes, no, kid, I'm freezing like I got nothing on. I go, I'm freezing too. I know, it's cold. And as I say that, I look up, and he's ripped belly button to his asshole, and his nuts are hanging out. He's been diving for an hour. I was laughing so hard. He's going, what? I can't even breathe. So what is it? I couldn't even tell him.
I've heard some funny stories about commercial diving. So you were actually spearfishing commercially?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've been spearfishing commercially for bass for 25 years.
Wow. No wonder you know so much about chasing them. That was good. I enjoyed that. I'd actually like to see that happen to Turbo one day, especially if we're diving somewhere cold.
Bring him here.
He's going to be small, I don't.
Bring him here. We can make it happen, you reckon? Perfect. All right, cool. Not your mother's surfing wetsuit?
No, I got a better one.
All right, cool. I guess we next part of the show is sort of dive bag. What's in your dive bag? So head to toe, I mean, you dive in cold water, chasing sort of the same species. What equipment are you using these days from sort of head to toe?
When I teach classes, my big thing is keep it simple, stupid, or keep it simple. Yeah. You know, yeah. So basically, nothing fancy. I mean, I keep it as simple as can be. You know, one of the tricks that I've altered on my guns that I haven't seen a lot of people do it. In fact, I think Terry Moss put it in his new book. I was in his chapter on striped bass, and I gave it to him. I actually gave him photographs in that book, and I think it applies to anyone that's shooting big fish. And one of the most difficult things I've always had with these fish is that if you connect your mono to the back of your shaft, it tears off within 5 or 6 fish. You break your shaft off. So I couldn't figure out how to make that better, and it was an evolution of different things. I ran Dyneema from the shaft up, and then I was wrapping some bands. What I ended up doing was taking a short piece of Dyneema, like a 1.9 millimeter Dyneema, putting it through the shaft, the back of the shaft, and then just tying an overhand knot on that, and then attaching my mono to that loop.
Okay.
I can now with that run the entire season of taking big fish one after the other and never have it cut through.
Oh, wicked. Wicked. All right.
But aside from that, I mean, just the regular stuff, the same stuff you're using, man. I mean, I use a soft fin. I do not like stiff fins. I like, proper kick is more important. Low volume masks, simple snorkels. I don't like perk valves or anything like that.
You're not sponsored or anything like that? You're not really loyal to any brands, or?
I am to Mars. I'm sponsored by Mars and Neritic Pole Spears.
Okay. Wow, you'd be a good man to sponsor with a pole spear with the big stripers you're taking down. I was going to say strippers again. I held off.
You're making me check my pockets for dollar bills.
Dollar bills, you stingy bugger. That's terrible. Turbo's.
They got rid of the $2 bills in America.
Turbo's throwing Benjamins at him.
Girl's got 8. I don't know.
All right,
cool.
Know what that is. So you like the Marius gear? Are you wearing a Marius suit as well?
Yeah, I wear the Marius suit, 5.5 mil suit, and I shoot the Marius guns. They work great. They're pretty much bulletproof.
David, I wanted to ask you. You use reels over float line, floats and rig line. Why is that?
Because of the high current. Because you're getting in and out of the boat. I prefer reels if they're set up properly, as long as you make sure every dive you don't have any tangles in the reel, that type of thing. And one of the ways that I teach people to use the reel, or I insist that they use the reel, is that once they've made the shot, to palm the reel so that it doesn't allow it to backlash on a heavy hit from a fish. And if you do that, they'll consistently work all the time. They're bulletproof.
What reels are you running? What brand of reel?
The Mars, set up on the Mars.
All right, cool. Okay, and the Serrano, pneumatic, is that a dry barrel gun as well?
No, that's not a dry barrel. They come out with one, but no, I'm not shooting the dry barrel.
So this thing's loud?
Yeah, it's loud, man. You can jump right out of your fins if you're laying next to it.
Yeah, I bet you would. Is it time to top up your t-shirt drawer? Then head over to noobspearo.com and get your hands on our black shirt or our white shirt. Pretty simple. They're $35 Australian each. Use the code free shipping until Christmas time this year and top up your t-shirt drawer with something you actually like. And support the show as well while you're doing it. That's just noobspearo.com. Thank you. Chances are, if you're listening to the Noob Spearo podcast, you love hearing other people's adventures, stories, tips and techniques, and what they have learned from around the world. Now, Spearing Magazine, Noob Spearo's partner, have got the best spearfishing magazine in the world, and it is jam-packed with stories from all over the globe. If you go to spearingmagazine.com, you can buy yourself a subscription to the magazine and get a free hat or long sleeve shirt. That's spearingmag.com. All right, the last part of the show, David, is called Spearo Q&A. It's kind of a faster paced round of questions, and then we'll head off. We might find out a little bit more about how people can get in touch with Spirit Charters. But first of all, what is the single best piece of advice you've ever been given for spearfishing?
Ever been given for spearfishing? Maintain a low heart rate, slow movement, avoid any form of demeanor whatsoever while hunting.
All right, cool. Who has been the most influential person in your spearfishing and why?
Dave Sipperly. I trained with him for a long time for the United States Nationals and just learned a host of information from him.
Yeah, cool. And if you had to start all over again, it's completely different. Spearfishing is completely different now than it was when you started a long time ago. But if you started all over again now, what would you do differently?
Not a thing. I wouldn't change it, man.
All right, and what current challenges do you have in your own spearfishing, and how are you approaching them?
What current challenges? It's a never-ending work on extending breath hold and keeping your heart rate down and keeping conditioned to do that. It's always been the same, never changes. It's if you really want to be great at it, it requires work. You have to do breath hold techniques. You have to do air packing techniques. You have to maintain a good cardiovascular regimen.
And at 51, you're fit as a fiddle. You're still taking out these things. Is the spearfishing? Is it probably one of the best types of exercise? Do you think?
No, it's funny. The guys on the boat today thought I was 35. That's pretty common, And they said, why is that? Is that from spearfishing? I said, no, that's from chewing tobacco. But
that's pretty cool. All right. So Spirit Charters goes out of Rhode Island during the summer season, particularly. You operate what time of the year you operate, David, and how can people get in touch with you?
Mid-June until late October. And I've got a website that's www.spearfishcharters.com.
All right, cool. We'll link that up in the show notes. And you're on Facebook. Have you guys got an Instagram page and a bloody YouTube? You've got a YouTube channel?
Yeah, YouTube's under my name, and then the Instagram is under Spirit Charters.
No worries. I'll link that up in the show notes. So if people want to come and have a look, just pump in David Hochman One Spearo, and there'll be links there to all of your material. Awesome to have you on the show, David. Have you got any sort of parting tips or advice or guidance for our audience? I put you on the spot there, didn't I? Just get.
So for our local guys, I'll say this. One of the things I see guys do is drop fish because they allow the fish slack. I wanted to mention this before, so I might as well mention it now. So one of the things I tell people is once they hit a fish, to keep tension on the fish and then get to the surface, obviously, and recover, but never let the slack off because, whether the flopper's set up correctly or not, by giving the fish slack, it's a good chance you could lose the fish.
Okay, awesome. Yeah.
Good piece of parting advice.
Yeah, that is awesome. All right. Cool.
All right,
David.
David, thanks for coming on the show, mate.
Yeah, awesome.
We really enjoyed that talk about striped sea bass. Daily, Shrek, you learned a little thing or two?
Yeah, and strippers too. That's how you say it. Yeah. All right, cool. All right, thanks, David.
All right, guys, thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Wow. That interview was a ton of fun. David Hochman, what a champion over there at Spirit Charters. Now, one of the things that really stuck out to me in the show was just sort of bedding down on the bottom and really locking your fins in somewhere. I mean, what a great tip and just a really practical way to, stop them from scaring fish. A real good visual giveaway if you haven't got them secured somehow. So, magic interview. Now, in a fortnight, we're back with an interview with Pat Swanson from New Zealand. Now, I did this interview in-house in New Zealand with him. Pat and I have ended up becoming good buddies, and what an absolute champion, man. He's served in various capacities in New Zealand spearfishing for a number of years. Also the three-time New Zealand champion, and very well regarded in the sport with lots of friends and some champion fish shot over his time in the sport. Really enjoyed chatting with him. So tune in a fortnight to my chat with Pat Swanson. Thanks for listening today, guys.
Thank you for joining us on today's show. As always, we've had a blast recording it. And as we all know, every good Spearo needs a good supplier of good equipment. Now, you can find that good equipment at spearfishing.com.au. That's right, our show sponsor, Adreno. Their online store can be found at spearfishing.com.au. And if you use the code NoobSpearo at checkout, you'll save yourself $20 on all purchases over $200. So get online and check those guys out.
Thanks for listening today, guys. Look, if you are seriously interested in becoming better at spearfishing, then go over to Amazon.com. Get your hands on an ebook that Turbo and I have written.
Yeah, that's right, guys. We have put pen to paper and we've come up with 99 tips to get better at spearfishing.
That's right. Head over to Amazon.com and leave us a review, because the only people to review the book so far were Levi's mum and my mum. So 99 tips to get better at spearfishing. Thank you.
Thanks to our mums too, our two favourite ladies.
Yeah, thanks for listening today, guys. See ya.